Welcome to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, brought to you by ReplenishingCareTechnologies8.com. I'm your host for the show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be on. Always happy to be on. Let's talk some boxing, Mike.
And our other co-host, if you follow the GruelingTruth.net, you'll see his original 8 rankings every month. Help me welcome to the show, John Einreinhofer.
Good to be here again, Mike.
And our guest is best known for his Montero on boxing, also writes for Boxing Monthly, also does work with the Undisputed Champions Network. Help me welcome to the show, Michael Montero.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys, we'll start off. We got Sergey Kovalev in the rematch against Einreinhofer this weekend. Let's just go around the horn real quick. I mean, we'll start off with Michael. Michael, did you have Kovalev win in the first fight or Ward? And what do you think that Kovalev can do this time around to make the result a little bit different?
I had Kovalev winning the fight. I was actually ringside covering it, and I can tell you that most of the media had Kovalev winning, especially those people that said they had Ward the whole time, because before the scores were announced, they looked really nervous and depressed. And as soon as the scores were announced, there was that one row in the media section that jumped up and down and said, oh, I knew all along I had it for Ward. They had it for Kovalev too. I would say a good 75% of ringside media and just talking to fans in the casino and everything later on that night and then the following day had it for Kovalev. So in the rematch, though, you look at the 3 judges. I think Steve Eisfeld is the best judge of the 3. I thought that he had the correct score for the Joshua Klitschko fight going into the 11th round of that fight. I think he was the only official judge who had that fight correctly scored for Klitschko going into that 11th round. I think that he'll score this fight probably fairly for both fighters in terms of styles, but the establishment judges with, I think it's Dave Moretti and Glenn Feldman, I think will favor Ward's style again in those close rounds. So for Kovalev to get the decision this time, particularly from 2 establishment judges, I think Feldman's out of the East Coast actually, but to get the close rounds from judges like that, he's going to have to be more active. He's just going to have more punch volume, throw more punches, especially to the body. I thought Kovalev made an adjustment late in that first fight and started going to the body. I think he actually hurt Ward in the 12th round with the body shot. I think that he needs to start doing that earlier. I think for Ward to actually win the fight legitimately this time, I think he just needs to start earlier. I think that he was surprised by Kovalev's athleticism in the first fight and surprised at just how much better Kovalev was than any fighter he had faced yet up until that point in his career. And it took him a few rounds to get going. I think now he's seen Kovalev, seen what he has, and he just needs to start earlier. That's, I think, the key to victories for both guys.
Yeah, and Michael, I think the key to the fight is just the distance the fight is fought out. I mean, if Kovalev can keep him at a distance, which means he's going to have to throw more punches than he did, especially the last 6 or 7 rounds of the last fight, I think that's a key because I would think Ward wants to get inside and make him as uncomfortable as possible.
Absolutely. I think that's what Ward does. You know, it's not so much about Ward's offense, you know, what he does to you as far as landing hard shots. It's more about him nullifying what you want to do and spoiling your work. And I thought on the inside in that fight, particularly over the second half, as you mentioned, I thought Ward did a good job. Now, some of the tactics are borderline illegal. There was some holding and hitting. There was some hitting on the break, you know, on the ref's blind side. But if the ref isn't enforcing the rules, if the ref isn't stopping any of that or giving the fighter a warning, even if it's a soft warning, then it's up to Kovalev to make up for that. And, you know, that's an adjustment Kovalev needs to make in this fight. If Ward gets close, maybe Kovalev needs to initiate some clinches and hold both of Ward's arms so he can't do some of that stuff on the inside. I agree with you, though. I think the distance of this fight, and it's going to be, the tone will be set very, very early. The difference between this fight and the first fight, I think the first fight, both fighters were surprised in different ways. As I mentioned, Ward was surprised with Kovalev's athleticism and had to adjust. And I think Kovalev fell in love with his power a little bit and got a little 1-2 happy after that early success and just settled into a very, very constant rhythm that Ward was able to time. I think both guys are going to come into this fight trying to set the tone right away for the entire fight early on.
Yeah, and we'll go to Jeremiah now. Jeremiah, like he said, it seemed like he got comfortable. He started. It's kind of like a football team that goes out and scores on the first play, and then for some reason they have a hard time scoring the rest of the game because they think the thing that got them in the end zone so easy at first is still going to work. Andre Ward's a guy that can adjust to almost anything, one of the smartest boxers of the last couple decades. How do you see this fight going?
Well, I mean, it's obviously difficult to kind of, pick and choose, who I think is going to do better at what. But, I mean, obviously, as you guys already touched on, I mean, Ward's game plan, I think, is certainly to go inside and bang him up a little bit more. I mean, I've been paying attention to Ward's training a little bit, and to me, he looks like he's trying to bulk up, which for me is a clear indicator that in fact is his game plan. I mean, I've seen that he's doing a little bit more weight training. Whether that helps him is, still to be determined. I mean, Kovalev to me is still the naturally bigger guy, and if somehow he can adjust and, bull Ward around, push Ward back to the ropes, I think that's going to be to his favor. I think he should have done more of that in the first fight, actually, where he kind of showed Ward who's the boss. But for me, it's still a pick-em fight. I mean, again, if Kovalev can adjust to whatever Ward does on the inside, then I think he's got a good chance of winning. But unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, as we talked about before, Mike, it's Kovalev, because of his power and because people respect it so much, he hasn't had to get inside and bang with guys. I mean, he picks them off from distance. They respect his power. They act timid, and then he's able to work from there. Ward showed that he wasn't intimidated by the power, at least, not enough to quit the fight. But again, for me, it's still a 50-50 fight. I really don't have a winner here.
All right, John, what's your take on the fight?
I also thought Kovalev won the first fight, but I've become troubled with Kovalev's performances against guys that just give him a little bit of boxing. Hopkins, Chilemba, even though he dominated those fights and he scored knockdowns, like he knocked down Ward. Of course, Andre Ward's a lot better than those guys. But Kovalev just seems to get timid. There's something in his head that he wants to then box. And, Ward, of course, one of the best, never been beaten. I think that Ward now, he's been more active. He had the long layoff. I think that's going to help him this time because now he's been in the ring with Kovalev. He's been in the ring with Barrera since he's been back. So, this will be his third formidable opponent since he's been back. Second fight with Kovalev, the one with Barrera. And I think when you look what Barrera did to Shabransky and Ward handled Barrera so easily and dropped them, that win's looking a lot better now than it did at the time. And I just think now with Ward being more active, very close fight. I originally thought in the rematch I'd be picking Kovalev because I thought he won the first time. But he's 34 now. I agree with what Michael said. The key is he's got to pick up the volume. I mean, that was his problem in those rounds, letting Hopkins go the distance, who, even though Hopkins then laid off, Joe Smith got Hopkins out of there. Gvozdzik got Chilemba out of there. Kovalev didn't stop those guys. I now, as this fight has come closer, and of course it's here, I think I'm picking Ward now. I think that Ward won't get dropped this time, and of course, though I thought Kovalev won the first fight, the knockdown, of course, greatly benefited him the way, I was looking at it, the 10-8 in a close fight like that was important. And I think Ward this time will be a little bit sharper because more fights since the layoff. Both of them, of course, getting slightly up there in years now, but Kovalev, being that he has to pick up the pace more and he hasn't been able to do it against boxers, I think at age 34 that's going to probably start to become a tougher task for him. And I think that I'm going to go with Ward by decision this time around.
All right. So, Michael, my question is this. I was on a show last night, Ringside Reporter. I think you were on it a few weeks ago with Eric. The one thing they brought up was some dissension possibly with John David Jackson in Kovalev's corner. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that was much ado about nothing. I mean, there was a brief talk from the Ward side to John David Jackson, but it was kind of just like a reach out. Hey, man, what do you think about this, that, the other? I don't think there was any real contract or anything like that being discussed. They threw out a dollar figure, and he said no. Basically, John David Jackson has said it would take Fort Knox for him to go change camps. And, you know, if they paid him enough money, he would have. And I think people have taken that quote and they've run with it. He was really saying it would take a ton of freaking money. It'd have to be life-altering, you know, like hitting the lottery to go train with Andre Ward. But just thinking about it logically, Ward has worked with Virgil Hill in his entire life pretty much. John David Jackson and Virgil Hill do not get along. And John David Jackson, it'd take just millions of dollars for him to stand in the same room with Virgil Hunter and work with him. So the whole premise of it is crazy. It's literally just Jay Price, who's a part of, is it James Price or Jay Price? I can't think of. It was a guy who works with Rock Nation, Andre Ward's team, basically trying to get in Kovalev's head. There's really nothing to it.
Yeah, and the one thing I have noticed about this is Ward usually doesn't talk a lot of crap before a fight, and it seems like this time around is a little bit different. I mean, should we read anything into that possibly?
I think both fighters are talking a lot of crap. The one thing, you know, we see a lot of fighters kind of play that up to drum up interest in a fight. That's not happening here. These two guys do not like each other, and the promotional companies don't like each other. Main Events has pretty much just pulled back and let Rock Nation run the show. And, in fact, that's what Andre Ward and his team demanded before they signed on for the rematch. Even though this agreement was signed back in 2015, Ward and his team wanted to change the terms and dictate some of the terms of the rematch, or else they weren't going to do it. Kathy Duva was going to sue them to get the rematch going. So finally they said, look, we'll do the rematch, but we want to run the promotion. So Kathy Duva and Main Events, they've just pulled back, and Rock Nation is running this show. So anyone who had any questions about the, you know, how inept or, you know, how good or bad Rock Nation is at their job, well, just look at this promotion and you can answer for yourself. But at this point, Main Events, they've kind of pulled back, and the fighters are jawing at each other more than the promoters, which I find very interesting. I mean, Sergey Kovalev's Twitter, his Instagram has been really entertaining over the last few weeks. And I don't know if he's trying to get in Ward's head or if Ward got him pissed off. I just know that these two guys do not like each other, and it's real. It's going to correlate into the ring Saturday night.
So my question is this. I mean, is this something that you think would affect negatively Ward more or Kovalev more? I mean, is it something where Kovalev gets so jacked up he's trying to take his head off, and maybe that's what Ward's trying to get him to do?
I think that's what Ward is trying to do, yeah. I think that's what his whole team's trying to do. And that tells me, if I had to guess, and it's always hard with Andre Ward because he doesn't talk to media, and he's so insular. His camp is so insular. But to me, it looked like they were more hesitant to do the rematch. They wanted to control terms and dictate things, and they were the ones trying to get in the other side's head from the get-go. And I think that Kovalev and his team have been very reactionary, and they've came right back with it. But all this, the antics of trying to pull John David Jackson over, you know, not showing up for the HBO, they were going to shoot a preview, like one of those face-off shows. And Ward was a no-show for that. They were going to do it in Vegas after the Canelo-Chavez fight, actually the Sunday morning after. They did an interview Saturday night, the night of the fight, and apparently Kovalev, who was coming all the way from Big Bear in California, all the way up there to Vegas to do it, he was a little late for that interview, and I guess Ward was pissed off, so that's why he was a no-show the next day for the HBO face-off shoot. So I just see more of those mind games and stuff coming from Ward's side, and that tells me that they're a little tight, they're a little nervous, they're a little tense. Now, how all that plays out in the ring, we'll have to see. But the one thing about Kovalev, he's disliked opponents before. He did not like Jean Pascal. He still doesn't like Jean Pascal if you talk to him about that fight. Actually, they had 2 fights. But he let himself get hit a little too much in that fight. But he didn't go crazy. He slowly, methodically put an ass whooping on Jean Pascal and systematically broke him down. That is who I think is going to show up Saturday night. That cold, calculated, mean, Sonny Liston-esque Sergey Kovalev. I don't think he's going to go out there in the first round and just try to destroy the guy. That's just not how he fights. In fact, I think Kovalev's power is actually overrated. I don't think he's that hard of a puncher. I just think he's deceptionally athletic and accurate, and he's a very good technical boxer, and people just don't expect that. When they get up in the ring with him, he surprises them with his ability to land accurate shots.
Yeah, and that's the thing that impressed me in the first fight was the way he was able to kind of corner, especially the first 4 or 5 rounds. And, I mean, if I remember right, in the second round before he even scored the knockdown, he hurt Ward with just a jab. And
exactly.
To me, this fight's a 50-50 fight, but the reason I'm leaning towards Kovalev this time is nothing I saw in the ring. It is completely what you just talked about with Ward and the stuff that's going on outside of the ring. Because to me, if you still think you're better than him, I mean, Andre Ward in the past wouldn't have said anything. He would have just went out and whipped the dude's ass again. But something tells me that he's a little bit more worried about this fight than he has been before.
I agree with that because even, you look at his fight with Carl Froch in the Super 6 finale, that tournament back in, I think it was the end of 2011. Carl Froch was talking a lot of trash. He wasn't getting as disrespectful as Kovalev has become, but he was talking a lot of trash. And Ward pretty much just looked the other way and went in the ring and systematically, broke Froch down. And he's not acting the same way here. He's being a lot more vocal. And the mind games, to me, it makes it, they seem tense. They seem nervous. And I could tell you, being ringside that night for the first fight, there was a thick tension in that arena. Very, very thick. You could cut it with a knife. It was one of the most tense atmospheres I've been at for a fight.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be like tenfold for this fight.
I agree.
And, I mean, the other thing is, I know we've got you for about a half hour here. You're a busy man, the Montero Unboxing. Where can everybody find your stuff here before we let you go here in a few minutes, just so I don't forget that? Because Jeremiah can tell you from time to time I forget things.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I'm on all the social media. YouTube, please find my channel. It's Montero Unboxing. But also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the same handle, Montero Unboxing. And then I just started a Patreon page. You guys know how this business is. There's no freaking money in it. And I'm trying to build up some more.
We're actually looking into doing the same thing. So.
Yeah, so everyone out there, if you could check out my Patreon page, it's the same thing, patreon.com/Montero Unboxing. And it's one of those things where, to get the technology, I mean, you guys starting this show, you know how it is. Getting the funds for the technology and producing all the stuff, it adds up. Those bills start to add up, man.
Yeah.
So any contributions and anything you guys can make, that'd be awesome. Check out my Patreon. And, yeah, that's it.
Most definitely. We'll finish up with this. I know everybody talks about the Triple G Canelo fight, but to me, I think this fight is the biggest fight of the year. I think it's a bigger fight than Triple G and Canelo. I just want all three of you guys' opinion. We'll start off with John.
Yeah, I heard, I think Max Kellerman was making that argument before the first Ward-Kovalev fight, but sorry, I don't buy that one. I think that Canelo and Golovkin's a much bigger fight.
No, I'm not talking about what's bigger to people outside of boxing. I just say in boxing, I think these are the number 1 and 2 fighters in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's close. I mean, we're talking. Let's talk about all 4 guys. I mean, wherever you're going to put them. I mean, I would have Ward number 1 at this point, and I wouldn't argue if somebody had Kovalev number 2. Golovkin certainly could be up 1, 2, 3. I'd have Canelo right up there myself. I think regard him higher than a lot of people, but everybody regards him highly enough. But I just think you've got there's more of a mystery suspense factor with Canelo and Triple G. I think in terms of how maybe it plays out, what the action might be, the personalities. I mean, I think Ward and Kovalev now is legitimately for the light heavyweight title. The Ring's got it for their title. I think it should be for the lineal title at this point. Stevenson just hasn't done enough. You want these things decided in the ring. But so significance-wise, in terms of hardcore followers of the sport, as we all are, they're both about the same in terms of, you got the real light heavyweight title, the real middleweight title, two of the traditional 8 divisions. So I value the significance very similar there, but I just think there's a little bit of a more mystique with Canelo and Golovkin about how that fight might play out. There's some different ways of how it's going to play out. There's no way that Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev is going to play out as a slugfest, especially with both of those guys now being into their 30s. That's not going to happen. So we pretty much know they're going to be pecking and tactical, and that takes away a little bit of the suspense factor for me from that fight. And we've seen it once before, so it's a rematch as well. So I personally don't think there's a good argument for this being fight of the year over Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez.
All right, Jeremiah.
Yeah. I mean, he makes a good argument. I mean, it is tough to decide because I do think, we all acknowledge that Golovkin and Alvarez is going to be a bigger event. Unfortunately, the promotional side of Ward and Kovalev hasn't been that good. I mean, and frankly, it's been pretty bad. I mean, it's nice that we're getting a little more.
It's been as bad as Virgil Hunter is a trainer.
Yeah, throw the white towel in on it. I mean, something this big should really get better promotion, but the problem is Ward just has this. I think a lot of fans look at Ward and he has this 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing, because it almost seems like retirement is always close to his mind, and it just kind of takes away from the mystique. And not only that, I get it, he's religious and whatnot, and he's trying to be like Jesus and meek and mild and whatnot. But unfortunately, in a sport like boxing, it doesn't sell that well. I mean, it doesn't ramp up excitement. And Kovalev, of course, his meme game is pretty good now. I got to give it to the guy, but he also has some flaws that people are wary of. So again, the promotional side has been lackluster. But aside from that, in terms of pure skill, I would actually rate this the highest. I mean, Alvarez, as good as he is, and for as young as he is, he's built up a pretty solid resume. Though again, of course, we all acknowledge that there's a little fluff to that. I mean, there's some names there, but Kirkland coming off 2 years and him being bigger than Khan and whatnot. There's still, in my opinion, like John says, there's some mystique, but there's some question marks there. I mean, I haven't seen Canelo Alvarez in with a good banger like Golovkin. So for me, Ward and Kovalev are proven commodities. Alvarez is about there, but again, his work at 160 has really kind of been hit or miss. So it just doesn't quite do it for me. So for me, I would probably rate Kovalev and Ward as the best fight. I mean, it's the significant. I mean, when is the last time we've had the number 1 and number 2 pound for pound guys going at it, especially 2 guys above 160? I mean, you don't see that often. I mean, as you guys know, I wrote an article on Pernell Whitaker not long ago, and Chavez was rated number 1 and Pernell Whitaker was rated number 2. But I mean, that was, over 2 decades ago. So for me, that's just the appeal there. I mean, 175 is a red-hot division. It's loaded. These guys are defining who the very best in that division is, and I would have it slightly above Golovkin and Alvarez.
All right, Michael?
You guys have all made great points. I think there's a few more things I could add. The thing with the Ward and Kovalev rematch, regardless of who wins, we're not going to get a rubber match. Kathy Duva main events have made it clear if they win, they're not going to work with Ward and Rock Nation again. And if they do, they're going to make it very, very difficult. Every bit as difficult as Ward and Rock Nation have made things for them for the first 2 fights. If Ward wins, then he's never going to work with Kovalev again because he hates him. But it also puts the entire light heavyweight division in complete gridlock. because of his promotional situation right now with Rock Nation, who may or may not be involved in boxing by the end of this year. And it's a strong possibility that they will not be involved in boxing by the end of this year. There's issues there. If he does stay with Rock Nation, he can't work with any of the Al Heyman fighters because there's beef there. So there's always promotional issues. There's either guys he doesn't want to fight or he can't fight because of managerial beefs and stuff like that. Then there's the fact that Ward, as you mentioned, Jeremiah, it's 1 foot in, 1 foot out with the retirement thing. So what happens there if he wins this fight? Right now, as it stands, the pound-for-pound list is probably 1A, 1B, Ward and Kovalev at the top. I personally think Roman Gonzalez beat Rungvisai earlier this year, but officially that decision went to Rungvisai, so you got to knock Gonzalez down from his perch. So these guys are the 1A, 1B. Okay, and they are the two best light heavyweights, and that never happens when those two guys fight each other. However, Golovkin and Canelo, that's the two best middleweights. Those are the two best middleweights in the world. And we don't know yet, depending on how Golovkin looks, and Golovkin might be the pound-for-pound best in the world. He's not right now. I wouldn't put him there now because he hasn't accomplished enough. But if he goes in there and soundly, decisively beats Canelo, he's the number one in the world. And if it's a close fight and he beats him, well, Canelo has a rematch clause. So they're going to do a rematch. I honestly, my prediction is that Canelo-Golovkin is going to be a 3-fight series. And I do think one of those fights is going to go to Dallas, or to Arlington, Texas, I should say. But that's what's going to happen there. So I think because of the possibilities of, I'm not even talking commercially, I just mean the ramifications over the next couple of years, what it's going to mean for the sport, I happen to believe that Canelo Golovkin's bigger. And I do respect that Ward and Kovalev are probably the two top guys right now, but I think that they're just kind of filling that space until some of these other guys, maybe it's a Lomachenko, maybe it's a Crawford, maybe it's an Errol Spence. Some of these other guys coming up are going to take that spot very, very soon. I don't think either of these guys is going to be pound for pound number one a year from now.
But no, their age would kind of predict that's probably not going to happen. That and the light heavyweight division's so stacked, they're going to have to be, I mean, if they're going to keep defending their title against top-ranked fighters, they're going to be fighting some monsters.
Exactly, and that's why I think, again, look, I'm not trying to beat up on Andre Ward. I'm just keeping it, I'm telling the truth, okay? Some people take that the wrong way. The fact is, if you look at this guy's track record, it suggests that if he beats Kovalev, he'll sit on ice probably till the very end of the year. Maybe he'll come back in November or December against someone we don't care about. But he may or may not retire. Probably will fight once a year. Is he going to fight the Gavage-Sticks? Is he going to fight the winner between, let's say, Barrera-Smith, one of those kind of guys? No. I don't know. That history would suggest not, right? So what does it do for the division? You guys mentioned this is one of the classic divisions, the light heavyweight division. What does it do if Andre Ward squeaks out with a split decision controversial win again in front of 7,000 fans at Mandalay Bay Saturday? What does it do? To me, it holds everything up. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to the fight. Don't get me wrong. And I'm credentialed to go, but I'm 50-50 on going up there to cover it live or just staying at home and watching it myself, because I've already been to Vegas 3 times this year, and that's 3 times too many. It's fun, but it gets old, you know. It gets old really quick.
Too much.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you know, my birthday is
Dallas or LA for the Triple G fight in there for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you know, this summer we've got some great events coming up. Here in L.A., we have a couple of great cards. We have a triple header in July. They're putting one together in September that's going to have Inoue. They haven't finalized that yet, but they're close to getting that done. A great 115-pound triple header. And then the same day, Callum Smith is fighting one of the Durrell brothers for a title. So Callum Smith is about to grab a super middleweight title. I mean, we got some great stuff coming up. So do I need to take
Broner and Garcia coming up too?
There you go. And that's probably going to go to Barclays. But it's a possibility that could go to Vegas too. So
I'll
probably
go to Cincinnati, where Broner lives and where I live, so I can get there easier.
I think you're biased.
I am biased.
I understand.
I want to go see it, and I don't want to have to tell my wife I'm going to go to Vegas or something. Yeah, that wouldn't work.
There you go, man.
I have to take her with me, and then it gets twice as expensive.
Your wife feels
Vegas
safer with
used to be
Cincinnati,
cheap,
Mike.
but what's that?
I said your wife feels safer with you in Cincinnati, Mike, than Vegas.
Well, Cincinnati's a lot like Vegas. I mean, there's casinos all over.
They have gambling now too, yeah.
Yeah, there's casinos all over the place now. You've got like 5 casinos within a half-hour drive of my house, so it's kind of like being in Vegas without the prostitution.
And Vegas doesn't have Skyline Chili either, so.
No, they don't.
Yeah, what's gambling without prostitution?
Or Skyline Chili.
Exactly.
Or sometimes all at the same time, you know.
But all right, real quick, Michael, before you got to go, who's your pick in the fight?
I'm going to go with Andre Ward by split decision. I think that Steve Eisfeld will have Kovalev or maybe have it a draw. I think that Moretti and Feldman will score it for Ward.
All right, Michael, it was great to have you on. We'd love to have you back again.
Absolutely. It was fun, guys. Let's do it again.
All right, make sure you check out Michael Montero on, Montero on Boxing Monthly Magazine, the Undisputed Champions Network, and what was the Patron account again?
It's patreon.com/Montero on Boxing.
Damn, I just said Patron, didn't I?
Hey, man, you just read my mind. Shit.
Well, it's from hanging out with John Einreinhofer so much that happens. But
well, he lives in West Virginia. I mean, what else is there to do?
Yeah.
Bad influence.
I would have said sister, but that would probably be not the right thing to say. All right, we're going to let you go, Michael. Thanks for coming on again.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
All right, you too. All right, so John, who's your prediction in this fight? Even though you gave it away at 10 minutes, killed all the suspense, but maybe you changed your mind by now.
I didn't know I was going to give it away early. Yeah, I don't change my mind that much, so I'll stick with Ward. But I did think. Kovalev won the first fight. I thought, rematch. I was thinking that, since he won the first fight, he should be able to take it again. But then the more I thought about it, Ward's gotten a chance to get the rust off now. Came on in the first fight. I don't think he'll get dropped this time. I think to expect Kovalev to turn up the pressure like he needs to when he wasn't able to do it in the first Ward fight, the Chilemba fight, in terms of getting the guy out of there, Hopkins, in terms of getting him out of there, considering how old Hopkins was. I don't think he'll be able to do it this time, so that's convinced me that Ward will get a decision this time, but though it is certainly a close one and not an easy pick.
All right, Jeremiah?
I really don't want to agree. I really don't want to pick Ward, but I do think he's going to win. I mean, I just think, Ward has such a high ring IQ. He's just so good at adjusting. And once he gets, the guy's a consummate professional. I mean, regardless of what you want to say about his personality or, his eye on retirement, whatever it is, he gets in there and he works hard and he's really good at what he does. I mean, just watching the first fight, again, I'm not convinced that Kovalev can adjust to the infighting that Ward is, I think, inevitably going to do. But I'll be rooting for Kovalev. I mean, honestly, I'm hoping that Kovalev wins, hopefully by knockout. I mean, I think it's better for the division. I mean, if Kovalev wins, I'm still holding out, even though it seems unlikely. I'm still holding out that him and Stevenson will get together. And I think that's a good winnable fight for him and one that'll, as we were talking about earlier, the state of the division post, Ward Kovalev, post Golovkin Alvarez, I still think that, there's some excitement there on Kovalev's end. I mean, I don't think he's going to last very much longer. Of course, he's a little bit older, but if he fights somebody like Stevenson, I still think he's keeping the division, the excitement fresh enough, and you include his personality, which, turns some people off, but at least he's forward in what he says and he's out there with his personality and he provides knockouts. I mean, that's the exciting part. So I'm picking Ward by decision, but again, my heart's going with Kovalev.
All right, I'm going with Kovalev. I'm going to disagree, even though we usually agree on all of our picks. I think Kovalev's going to win the fight, and I think Kovalev's going to knock him out in about the 5th or 6th round, maybe sooner. Now, it would not surprise me if Ward boxes his ears off and wins the fight, but I really think there's something to be said for somebody that never does the thing. I mean, Ward is not acting the way he normally does. I mean, I've heard Kovalev say stuff like he said before. And like Michael said, we've seen him with Jean Pascal. I mean, he didn't freak out and just run out and try to knock him out. I think a lot of people sell Kovalev short. I think Andre Ward over the last 15, 20 years is the most talented fighter I've seen. That counts Floyd Mayweather, because I've never seen Floyd Mayweather beat guys like he beat in their prime. The Carl Froches, the Mikkel Kessler. I mean, he's beaten he beat everybody at the super middleweight division that was good, and he took them all out. And Kovalev hurt him with a jab. So...
Yeah, and I think Kovalev's power is I think it's excellent. I mean, I think he's one of the hardest hitters in boxing, if not the hardest hitter.
And I think what Michael said made a lot of sense, that, you know, if you don't see a punch coming and it surprises you, it hurts a lot more than if you know it's coming. And the thing I noticed, I watched the fight again today and scored it. I still had Kovalev winning it, but I can also now see how somebody could have scored the fight from Ward. I mean, because to me, really, it was the first 4 rounds Kovalev dominated the fight. About the 5th round is when you would notice Ward would get close, and that made Kovalev uncomfortable, and Kovalev's grabbing him. You know, he's grabbing him with one arm, so Ward's still hitting him, roughing him up, and he wore him down like that. So the question is Kovalev a smart enough fighter to adjust, to throw more punches, to hit him to the body? And I think the ring IQ on Kovalev, just from the stuff he did in the first 3 or 4 rounds, tells me he can do it. Now, my only question with him is, at the age of 35, can he do it? Because let's face it, I mean, most people, when they get to the age of 35 that are boxers, you know, stuff doesn't work as good as it used to. I mean, hell, if you're a mailman, when you get to 35, stuff doesn't work as good as it used to.
Yeah, I can't run away from those dogs as easy.
What was that?
No, you can't outrun those dogs like you used to. But I mean, I agree. I mean, and the thing about this is as well is the reason I hold Kovalev's power in such high regard is when you look at him, he broke Cedric Agnew's ribs with a jab. How many guys have that kind of power? He knocked Ismail Salat out with a jab. I mean, a power jab. I mean, this guy. And not only that, when you look at the knockdown against Ward, it was not a full-fledged right hand that clipped him on the chin. I mean, he was like halfway through a punch, hit him with the mid knuckles in his hand. I mean, so imagine had he landed a punch crisp and clean, full extension. I mean, in my opinion, I think Ward's out. I mean, Ward's a tough guy.
Yeah, and I think eventually, I mean, they fought 12 rounds. He didn't land that punch yet, but I think Kovalev is technically sound enough. It's just a matter of time in this 12-round fight before he does catch him. And I think that Ward knows that. I think that's why Ward made it so difficult to get this fight made. I think it's why Ward has acted like generally an asshole since this fight has been made. And, I mean, he acts out of character. And usually, no matter what sport it is, if somebody acts out of character, it's usually out of a little bit of fear. And I'm not saying he's afraid. But I'm saying this, maybe the right word is concerned. I think he is more concerned fighting Kovalev than he has been anybody else he's ever fought, John.
Well, I think Kovalev's a big puncher. I'm with Jeremiah. I mean, Kovalev knocked out or knocked down virtually every fighter he's ever been in the ring with. He's one of the biggest punchers in boxing. Michael Montero certainly knows his stuff and respect all his opinions and agree with him a lot. But I think Kovalev's a big puncher. He is, but I do agree he's a better boxer than people think that he's accurate. I agree with Michael Montero there. Certainly, I think that is underrated with Kovalev. I think, matter of fact, in these fights like with Hopkins, Chilemba, first Ward fight, he maybe gets reliant on that too much. I think sometimes Canelo Alvarez does that as well. These are guys that can punch, but they get a little bit enamored with their underrated boxing skills, and they don't take full advantage of what they've got, with the power and the ability to put pressure on people with their punching power. So, you know, if Kovalev can put that pressure on, I don't think he will do it at this stage in with somebody as tricky as Andre Ward. Look what Andre Ward did to Barrera. But I think if somehow Kovalev can turn up the heat, get more punches off per round, you know, it's certainly a winnable fight for him, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that. But I think Kovalev has been good for boxing with the excitement he brings. I do disagree with you, Mike, and with Michael, and that with the Ward talking. I don't like to overrate the mental game. The longer I've watched boxing, it's a big part of it, but sometimes you got to remember it's going to come to the physical part first, then the mental. You got to have the abilities. But with that understood, Kovalev's been talking so much. I kind of read into it a little differently. I think he's been talking so much, even though, like I said, I've liked Kovalev as a fighter in his career and following him. I think he's talked so much that I started to get a little flavor as we got into the last month or so that he's thinking he can talk his way into this victory. And we all know, as in boxing as in life, after a while you just can't talk it. You got to do it.
Hey, you can't say that, John. You're a lawyer. That's how you win.
Well, I've learned that as a lawyer now. Like I always say, in litigation, you can get financially hurt, not physically hurt like boxers, but in litigation, everybody can get financially hurt, and there's a lot of the same stuff. You're younger, you think about the talk. You get older, and you're doing it, and your opponent starts talking too much, and you start thinking, what are they afraid of? They can't talk their way into trying the case and win, and you just got to do it. So.
I just want to jump in real quick about the whole Ward thing. Part of the reason I think that he's acting this way, where he's chatting a bit more, is not only because Kovalev has been, just outright, he's throwing all sorts of curse words and into the stuff that he's saying, but I also think part of it is the fact that Kovalev has, he's taken Ward's nickname, Son of God, and flipped it around and said Son of Kovalev. For a real religious guy like Ward, I think he takes offense to that. I mean, he's even said it on Twitter where it's like, it's one thing to, talk crap to me, but talk crap about my God. So I think he found a thing there where he gets to poke him and prod him a little bit. And I think
my take on it is this. A Christian probably wouldn't go around calling himself the Son of God, because the Son of God was Jesus.
Well, sure.
I hate to throw religion into the show, but I think that's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry, but I have never taken that nickname to go in a correct direction, if you know what I mean. So if he wants to get mad about that, that's fine. I just think in the end we got two guys that don't like each other, and they're going to get in a fist fight. And I think that it is going to be more action than the first fight, and I think this is going to be a really good fight.
Yeah, there's got to be more action.
And, I mean, it wasn't that the first fight was a bad fight. The first fight was just a technically really good fight.
I don't share the same optimism, guys. When you get, generally, in most cases, when you get guys in their 30s and in a rematch situation, I gotta do the old Teddy Atlas Customato mind games theories where sometimes you get the unspoken agreement that, hey, we're gonna both get another good payday on this, and maybe we're just gonna box around a little bit, and nobody's gonna let it hang out all too much here. I think a fight's like, despite what some people think of it, this is my take. And you've seen it in these pay-per-views in recent years as the years have gone on. One of the big problems with pay-per-views, fights like Mayweather De La Hoya. I mean, that was like a glorified sparring session to me. I mean, not saying that these weren't two of the most skilled guys of the era, but the way it was at that stage, it was. Sometimes you just get that kind of a thing.
Well, I think a fight that you're saying, I think the fight that would perfectly encompass what you just said would be like Duran-Leonard 3.
Yeah, Duran-Leonard 3. Duran, I'm as big
Mayweather
as
Pacquiao.
They come, but Duran just didn't want to do it that night, and Leonard wasn't going to take any chances either, and that's what you got. Sure, a lot of examples like that.
But John, it would really surprise me if Sergey Kovalev was all right with that, and it really would surprise me if Andre Ward was.
But how much is, again, it's not just Kovalev, but Ward too. Ward's cautious as it is. There's no doubt about that. That's been his entire career, and now he's into his 30s. And
see, I'll tell you, John, I don't buy the cautious thing with him. I think he's just a great boxer because I watched Sergey Kovalev put him on his ass win the first 4 rounds, and whether you thought Ward won the fight or not, Ward bit down, he got inside, he roughed him up, and he fought. You know, that's something you really can't say Floyd Mayweather ever did.
No, Ward did do that in that fight. I gave him credit for that as well. I saw that in the second half of the fight. But again, this is a rematch situation with these guys at this age, and I respect both men a lot. I wouldn't argue. Like I said, I could easily have these two as the top 2 pound for pound. I think Ward's earned the number 1 spot certainly at this point, and I wouldn't argue with Kovalev number 2, or if somebody's got Golovkin number 2 at this point. So there's no argument they're up there, but it's just got the makings for me of a fight that's not going to be a thriller. Hey, I hope for the sake of boxing I'm wrong, but unfortunately we're on a pay-per-view. We've got a pay-per-view going. You've got to look at the business side too. That's dead on arrival. It's looking at less buys than the first one, which was very low. So even if it was a great fight, nobody's going to see it live. So that's where boxing gets hurt, because the problem you have that keeps being repeated is that people that buy HBO for people that are boxing fans buy HBO for boxing. They're already paying their $15 a month for HBO for boxing, and then it gets put on HBO pay-per-view. So they're being asked to the same people are being asked to be charged double. That's been going on for years now at HBO. Fans don't want to buy into it anymore. I don't blame any of the fans. As good as this fight is, I don't question the fight, but it's just the business system at this point that doesn't work. So, not much good is going to come out of this for boxing, not because these two fighters aren't at the top, but because nobody's going to see it.
Well, and that problem is the promotional end of it more than anything.
Yeah, that's where, at least, say what you will, and this is one of the reasons that I've tried to talk them up, although I'm not going to argue that they've certainly had their problems in 2017, is, on the PBC side of these things, because we know it's divided by promotions and TV, which is all the Showtime side of things. They've gone away from the pay-per-view model. Now, Showtime doesn't have as many subscribers as HBO, so they don't get the numbers HBO does when they put it on regular Showtime, but at least they're not going on pay-per-view suicide missions anymore, which, even though they've got their problems, it's still better than what the HBO top-ranked Golden Boy side of things is doing. Now,
well, HBO is better than what it used to be, though, because if you remember, it seemed like a decade ago there was a pay-per-view every month.
Well, I think that's where they are. Well, their big fights now are pay-per-view. They're not trying to run as many as they were, but I just don't. I think it's worse than it's ever been, because fights like in the past, fights like Ward Kovalev that weren't going to sell pay-per-view were regular HBO. I mean, that's what we bought HBO for boxing for. That was the idea. You had to pay your HBO every month, but you're going to get some good fights that weren't available to the general public. Now those fights are HBO pay-per-view, and you're getting fights like even though they're good action fights, like Salido Vargas and things like that. Not your top talent guys in the game on your regular HBO.
Well, I can tell you this. This is the first pay-per-view I will buy since Mayweather and Pacquiao.
I mean, I think you could justify this one because of the talent of the guys involved and the significance. For me, I always look at, would it be for an original 8 title? I still care about those things, and this would be. This is that kind of level, and that meets my test. Are they legit top 10 guys in their division? Of course, and these guys are legit top 5 guys pound for pound, top 3 guys pound for pound. So can't argue with you there, Mike. It fits the significance test, any objective test, but I just have been, frankly, have just become worn out by HBO doing that. I'm kind of opposed to it in principle now, and I'm as big of a follower of the sport as anybody, but I just, $70, we got Rigondeaux and Flores on the undercard. I think Flores might give him a better fight than people think, but that's not an action fight, and that's not why you're paying $70. So I just think HBO's model. Jeremiah and I have discussed this quite a bit. I just think HBO's model is dead, and I support HBO when they reject Top Rank trying to give them pay-per-views that don't belong, but I think they've got to take it one step further with fights like Ward Kovalev 1 and 2 and say, guys, you got to work this out for regular HBO. We're not going to do the pay-per-view thing for you.
All right, Jeremiah, you got any final thoughts or any news you want to bring up?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to mention that, over the weekend it was the International Boxing Hall of Fame induction. And so, unfortunately, none of us got to go, but I'm thinking we should all go next year. I mean, Christopher Benedict was up there for the entire weekend. If you saw any of his social media pages, he was hanging out with James Toney, Pernell Whitaker, got a picture with Holyfield, if I'm not mistaken.
Marvin Hagler.
Yeah, Marvin Hagler, who everybody knows he's a big fan of. So it looks like he had a good time, and I just want to congratulate all the guys that made it up there. I mean, it looked like a lot of fun. I mean, guys like Jimmy Lennon Sr., of course, Jimmy Lennon Jr.'s dad, who was a great announcer himself, Johnny Tapia, Jerry Roth. I'm not too excited about that one, but Johnny Lewis.
Jerry Roth got in the Hall of Fame?
Yep, he got in this year. Yeah,
right.
I know. Yeah, I know, but
he used to be one of them guys when they'd announce the judges and they'd say Jerry Roth. I'd say, oh, this is going to be screwed up if it goes to a decision.
Yeah, you look for the money man there. You're like, you can already tell which way he's going to cast his vote. But Johnny Lewis, the longtime Australian trainer who was in with Jeff Fenech, Harding, Cassius Zhu, et cetera. Barry Tompkins got in. Same with Steve Farhood, Marco Antonio Barrera, who's well deserving, and Holyfield, who is probably maybe the best of that bunch. But I just want to congratulate all of them, and hopefully we can get some of those guys on.
All right, John, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I did have a couple of notes wanted to bring up, keeping up with the full world of boxing. You want to take note of the KOs by Regis Prograis on Friday night on the ShowBox. Looked spectacular, taking out Yoel Diaz Jr., and big things expected from Prograis with all the people you've got up at 147 pounds, even though he's at 140 right now. He's a southpaw with power and some boxing skills, who's been on a spectacular KO streak. He's entertaining in and outside the ring. You got to look at him. You also saw the Spanish youngster, John Fernandez, who's managed by Sergio Martinez. He's a 5'10" lightweight with tremendous punching power. And he had a spectacular KO as well. They said he's on the fence as to whether he's going to come over to the United States and train or stay in Spain. I think this kid's got to come to the U.S. and train and fight here with the potential he's got. Hopefully for the sake of boxing and his career, he's going to make that decision, because he will not be able to develop in Spain to his full potential with all the ability he's got. He could go a long way here. And along the lines of something we talked about within recent weeks, I saw a line already on Callum Smith and Anthony Durrell, and Callum Smith is a favorite over Anthony Durrell, so I found that interesting. He's a minus 200, so he's a bit of a favorite there. And Mikey Garcia is already a minus 800 favorite over Broner, so I don't think anybody here thought that, but for any of the people there that just don't really break down and analyze these things, that think Adrian Broner's got any kind of a real chance, think again on that. And I think we ought to note, my final note is that Tyson Fury hasn't fought now for 18 months, and he's got still PED hearings coming up. So we talked about Stevenson within the last week or so and squandering the linear light heavyweight title. It's really a shame to see that at the heavyweight title as well with Fury, but as I rate things coming up, I don't see how Tyson Fury can continue to be regarded as a champion, unfortunately.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. Once again, we want to thank Michael Montero for being on the show. Make sure you check out Montero on Boxing and the Undisputed Champions Network. We have a special show later on this week. I'm going to have John Rasponte, who was the author of Intimate Warfare, which is the story, the tale of Ward and Gotti. So very good book, highly recommended. He wrote the book with Dennis Taylor, so we'll have John on Thursday night, so you can check that out late Thursday night. That'll be on. Make sure you check out The Grueling Truth, www.thegruelingtruth.net, for all of our boxing interviews with the legends, our Inside Boxing Weekly show. We got a new writer here at the Grueling Truth. You want to tell everybody about our newest writer, Jeremiah?
Yeah. Paul Cupid is his name, and he's an Australian contributor. Funny enough, I found him, like I find a number of these guys. I'm just kind of patrolling social media. I'm asking if anybody, knows anybody. I mean, again, it's a constant recruiting effort. I'm trying to build the best team that I can around here. And Cupid was recommended to me by a guy named Matthew, who's an Australian as well. And Cupid is an IBRO member, so he's part of the prestigious International Boxing Research Organization like myself. He will be doing mostly Australian topics, but at the moment he's working on a five-part series leading up to the Manny Pacquiao-Jeff Horn series, where he details fights where Australians fought either well-known fighters or guys in title bids, kind of like Jeff Horn is doing soon. So we've already got two of the 5 pieces out. They're both worth checking out, and we just want to congratulate him, and I may have another writer on the way, so look forward to that.
Also, you talked about maybe possibly getting the guys from the Boxing Hall of Fame on, Marco Antonio Barrera. I know that we have connections with Marco Antonio Barrera, who speaks Spanish, also connections with guys like Lupe Pintor. So if there's anybody out there that speaks Spanish, we're not against having a Grueling Truth Boxing Legend show in Spanish. So if anybody there wants to hit us up, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. So if you're interested in doing something like that and you're qualified, get a hold of us. Make sure you catch all of our shows on iHeart, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Music. Anywhere you find any kind of sports podcast, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for Michael Montero, John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.